Visit atwsource.com to take the next step along your path of awakening. You're listening to Awakening Truth, worldwide radio, and its network of radio shows. Presented by the teachers of Awakening Truth Worldwide, where spirituality, truth, and consciousness collide.
Welcome to A Guiding Light. I'm Dr. Joseph Marra, and I will be your host for the next 60 minutes. I will be joined by my very special guest, Lisa M. Harrison. We'll be discussing her personal journey and those whom she has interviewed. We'll dive into whether any of the interviewees have influenced her opinion of the current time and what Lisa may know of the 2012 phenomenon. Tune in as we discuss the possibility. Lisa M. Harrison, welcome to A Guiding Light.
Thank you, Joseph. Congratulations on being back on the air.
Well, thank you so much. I've been very excited to get back to it. I've had a lot of requests, and, it's something I enjoy doing, so thank you. Well, how about we start off with your personal story, and maybe you can tell the listeners who you are and how you got to where you are today.
That's a good question. Basically, I'm a mother of three who has been on her own personal spiritual journey for about 25 years. I've always been curious. I've always wanted to know the why of things for as long as I can remember. And going back maybe about 2 years now, the whole 2012 phenomenon, I guess I became aware of that about 10 or 12 years ago through the Mayan calendar. And it became one of those things that you look into, you research, it sounds interesting, you wonder what may or may not happen, especially 10 years ago. It all just seems like so far away. But around 2010, there was a sense of urgency around learning more about where we were heading. And in my own research and in my own searching, I was coming across some amazing people that I wanted to be in touch with, I wanted to talk to, I wanted to ask them questions directly. I wasn't happy with just watching their videos or reading their books anymore. And I guess I naively thought that it would be really cool if I could have these conversations, if I could get to these people and make those conversations and their answers available to others. And once I made that very vague decision, really, initially, things just started to fall into place. People that probably shouldn't have been available to me, technically, were. And as it turns out, there's not that many people here in Australia who are doing this kind of work. Most of it's European and American based. Starting to now, more so. And it's just been a pretty amazing roller coaster, really. And I've learned a lot. I've spoken to some really interesting people. And the information that's coming out now that's being revealed, for me, the most fascinating stuff is the ancient knowledge that's coming back up, that's been suppressed for so long, that we're starting to rediscover and remember. So that's kind of what led me to where I am now.
So would you say that any of the people that you interviewed have influenced your opinion or your decision on, say, life itself here on this planet at this time?
To some degree, they all have touched me. They've all opened my mind a little, to a greater or lesser degree. How can I put this? It's reinforced my belief and my understanding that the only thing you can really trust is your own gut and your own intuition. And, and I'm sure lots of listeners are in the same boat. you've been on a spiritual journey for many years. You've read hundreds of books, and the only one that sometimes you can read a 300 or 400-page book, and it'll be worth it just because there's one line in it that triggered the most amazing aha moment in you, because it triggered a knowing from within. And that's the information that I trust. That's the information that I know is true. And the frustrating thing about these times is that it's really hard to get two people to agree on their vision of what we're going through or where we're going.
Right.
Yourself, we've got scenarios from, the pole shifts and the Earth crust moving to 3 days of darkness to, it's just going to be a slow transition of improving the planet to there is no surviving beyond 2012. There's just so many different scenarios out there. So I constantly tell people, regardless of what anybody's saying out there, this is not about finding, a cult leader. This is about becoming your own guru and following your own intuition and listening to your own heart and your own gut and trusting in that, and you'll be where you need to be and doing what you need to be doing.
Right. Yeah, I found this in my own research, exactly what you're saying. And sometimes it's quite confusing, like you say, because there is so much that's out there, and you have to use your own discernment about you to know what fits you, because some of the things that are going on are going to be a reality of some of the people that are out there. It depends what their journey is and what they've come in here to do and to experience. And because there's so many different dimensions and there's so many stories and so many possibilities, that I don't think, well, actually I know, not anybody knows the actual way things are going to play out, because basically it's all possibilities. And we can all, predict all kinds of things, but it depends on the consciousness field, for one, that's around the planet. And the more people that think about one thing at one time, it becomes that reality within that moment and in that time of the people that are here on the planet at this time. However,
I agree.
An event could happen that would totally change that, and that's why predictions aren't 100% accurate all the time. And you could have the best psychic that would tell you something that in that moment, that's what they're seeing their future could be, but it can change from day to day, minute to minute, especially now in these changing times that we're in. Now, if we were to go back 10 years ago, things were a little more settled, maybe not not real settled, like maybe 50 years ago would even be better yet. But as we're coming closer to this 2012 moment, we're in the times now, but towards the end of the year, things, and I think everybody would agree on this that is listening to the show, that things just seem to be speeding up. Have you felt that as well?
Oh, God, yeah. And I think that's what you're saying is right, that 50 years ago when times were slower, our ability, the evidence of our ability to manifest wasn't as obvious because things took longer to show up. But now, as things are speeding up, we're seeing just how quickly we can manifest in our own personal lives. And I think we're making this up as we go along, to be honest.
Right.
That collectively, like you said, what we're focused on is what we're going to bring our attention to, is where the energy's going, and that's what we're likely to manifest. And that is becoming more and more and more and more apparent. And I think that's why we're getting so much disinformation as well and so much fear-mongering, is because there are those who have a vested interest in seeing us go down a negative path. But at the moment, we're still in a situation where there are so many possibilities. And if we could all get on the same page and put our energy and attention to the positive timeline that we're after, the outcome that we're after, then that's what we'll get.
Right.
And one of the things that Alfred Weber and I discussed was prediction. And when you go back hundreds of years, and whether you're looking at Nostradamus or Mother Shipton or some of the stuff that's been around for a long time, a lot of them were very, very accurate right through history up until about the 80s. and then at the end of the 80s, their accuracy dropped right off.
Right.
I mean, I personally just thought it had to come down to maybe the cosmic convergence. We changed something at that point because their accuracy just dropped right off. And like you're saying, a psychic now can look at the more prominent outcome from this standpoint right here, right now, but you can change that. And
right.
We're seeing the evidence of that really, really powerfully, I think, in our own lives.
Yeah, one other thing that I think is important to say right now is one of the other variables is each individual person has their own consciousness about them. And they can focus their intent and their, how should I say, where they want to be in their vibratory state of being. If they want to be on the positive timeline, those who are around them, basically the individual kind of shifts and goes in a different direction, and those who were once there beside them kind of fall away. And so there is, one of the variables is there is a consciousness field that we're all tapped into. But what's important to say is we don't all have to go down that particular timeline because we all have our own journey. We're all our own gods in the making, if you will. And so just for the listeners who are out there, I don't want to come off and say that, well, yeah, you have to be with the collective consciousness and that's where we're all going, because there's so many variables in this story, and I'm just trying to paint the picture the best way I can over the air. And of course, I'm Italian and I like to use my hands a lot, so this is difficult.
So, I'm a hand talker too, yeah.
But at any rate, one of the other variables is we all have our own consciousness, and I like to describe it as, you come into this world and you have these blinders on, because if you knew that you were a godlike being or a god, and you stepped into this dense world without the blinders on, you would be heading right back to where you came from. At least I would anyway, because it's so dense, it's so thick, it's so different from where we come from these higher dimensions. And I think that when you come into this life, we all agreed to be here at this particular time, and some people call it a soul contract. And now this is my belief. I don't want to push it on anybody else. And again, like you said, you don't want to follow a guru, but you take what resonates with what individual says, and you leave the rest. So some people might be at a higher vibratory frequency than I'm even speaking right now, and it might not ring true to them. They might be in a different place. However, there might be people that are right where I'm at or lower than me, and it might bring them to a higher perspective. Just like you were saying when you were reading a book and you come across just one sentence or one thought that really rings true and goes, oh, wow. And then it brings it out of you, because basically we each and all of us have the answers within. The biggest story on this planet is how powerful each individual person is, but collectively you can magnify that by it's just ungodly. And what do you think about that? Have you experienced that, or do you think that? Or?
I think that who we really are and the power that we have is the single biggest suppressed secret ever.
Right.
And that I think our minds would boggle, because honestly, we look at where we're at right now. Yeah. From the time we're born, we're injected with these, vaccines, these poisons. We are indoctrinated from a young age through the so-called education system. Our air and water and food is poisoned. We are dumbed down through media. I mean, we are being attacked physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally from every angle.
Absolutely.
Yet, in spite of it all, we're waking up.
And we're still
of it all, we're still here. Yeah. I mean, we may only be living to sort of 60 to 80 years, which is a miracle in itself, probably.
Yeah.
Compared to with what's going on with our bodies, but we're still having this awakening. We're still connecting. We're still, in spite of it all, and I think that says so much about who we really are and the power that we really have. And we look at the fact that we live to 60 to 80 and think that that's an achievement, but quality of life deteriorates from around 40 to 50 for some people. And we're so twisted in our view. We've been trained to think and see things in such a twisted way that we don't give credit to our own power. You know, I mean, the fact that our bodies can do what they do, in spite of all the poisonings and the suppression and the, you know, even just the invisible electromagnetic soup that we're swimming in, I think it's testament to the absolute miracle and power that we are.
Right.
And that movie, A Bug's Life, is perfect. You know, it's such a perfect analogy, you know.
Yeah.
And that line where the big grasshopper says, you know, they outnumber us 100 to 1. If they figure out that they're the ones with the power, you know, our way of life is screwed. And some people, unfortunately, are so focused right now on the negative conspiracy Illuminati stuff and what their latest plan is, but they can't implement Jack without us.
Right. And
it takes us.
Right, exactly. And I've used that same analogy. It's so funny you brought that up. It was so perfect. And when you're awake to see it for what it truly is, it's like hiding the truth in plain sight. And yet the people that are awake will know exactly what that was meant to be, and other people may not even, just right over their head. So, and, you know, I'm not bashing anybody that's asleep or anything, because I used to be one of those people. I've always questioned, but I just didn't have an awareness. Like you said, things never made sense to me, and I've always questioned, like, what in the heck is really going on here? None of this. You can be born onto this planet that's huge, and some people are multi-billionaires, and other people are just starving to death. And it never made sense to me. So, again, with the research that I've done and the people like yourself that I've interviewed over the years, it was like kind of putting the pieces to the puzzle together. And our bodies, like you say, are just magnificent. And part of our humanness, to define humanness, I mean, there's so many aspects of humanity that we don't recognize, generally speaking. Most of us just look at it as physicalness when we don't talk about the emotional, the mental, the spiritual parts, and the thought, the mental mind. And when you take that into consideration, that thought becomes reality. And when you're thinking of something, and I use this analogy, the people that go to a church to pray, it's not the church or the denomination of the church. It's not the building that creates the miracle. It's the individuals coming together collectively or communing together, and that energy that is sent out is magnified when all the people in that particular church are praying on the same thing at the same time. So, and there's been research for this, and this is how, at least in my opinion, this is how miracles occur, and thought becomes reality. So the way I look at it is, life doesn't happen to you, it happens from you. So what you're saying about the negative timeline and people that are so focused on this, that's what they attract, because there is this law called law of attraction, and we all know about it today because of, you know, the various videos that are out and the education from Abraham Hicks, I believe it was, and or Esther Hicks, I should say. And these were channeled messages, but nonetheless, they're still there and they're valid. So the law of attraction, what you put out is what you get back. So the more you focus on the negativity or that timeline, even though you don't mean to, if you're trying to get this information out, but it's all negative, you're attracting more to yourself than what you realize. And I thought that, I think that's really important to put out there to people, because not only do we not know how powerful we are, but we don't even know how detrimental to ourselves we are. Because, you know, if we claim the victim role all the time, and another good example of this, I think, is like relationships. You keep attracting that same person to yourself, and you'll break up, and it's like over and over, that same person. It's, you know, it's a different person's name, but they have the same personality until you finally get it and wake up and say, oh my gosh, okay, it's me that's attracting this. What do I need to fix about myself?
Well, how many women do you know have got that philosophy that all men are bastards and attract nothing but?
Exactly. Or people that run across the country your country, mine, whatever, or go to a different part of the world, thinking that their life will change. But the problem is they're taking them with them, and they didn't fix themselves, so they're just going somewhere else, and they're going to have a similar experience. So I guess it's important for us to discuss maybe going within and shedding away some of this negativity, blockages, attachments, or whatever that's been, influencing us from day one, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, the most profound practices for me have been sun gazing and obviously meditation. I mean, you can't beat that. But sun gazing, I don't know, I can't even explain what that does to you, to be honest. But something shifts. And I would also recommend just maintaining an open mind and really staying in that place of the more I know, the more I realize I don't know.
Right.
And because you're constantly evolving and growing and changing, and information that did not resonate with me 6 months ago feels so true now. And it could change again. And I could see it from a whole other perspective in another 6 months' time.
Absolutely.
Or even tomorrow, So, yeah, not being too attached to your belief system at any point in time, at any one time.
Right. That's so funny you say it that way, because that's exactly how I lecture it, and I talk about this whenever I'm being interviewed, is when I started this process, I was looking for the truth. And I thought that it was just kind of like mathematics, 1 + 1 is 2. And once I found out what the truth was, then I could go and tell everybody. And it turns out I found out what the truth is, but it's different for each individual person, because we are all at different levels of awareness or consciousness. So as you say, 6 months ago, my truth was different. Even a week ago, my truth was different than it is today, because somebody crossed my path and enlightened me in such a way that made me raise in my consciousness, which changed the truth about who I am and what I believe. So, as you say, it's perfect. Be open to the possibilities is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I'm not that I've really made a conscious decision. I've just accepted that I am searching, and I will always be searching. That there is no end to this,
right?
Because it's all so multidimensional and multifaceted that there's no 1 + 1 = 2, and that's the end of the story.
Early on, a few years ago, I was, of course, naive about this whole thing, and I thought, honestly, for some reason, I thought that in this lifetime I was going to get it, and that was going to be it. Then I could go to heaven, I could just hang out there, and everything would be cool. And I was with my friend Terry Ippoletti, who was a deep channel, and these higher beings that came through. When I said that, they kind of just laughed and were like, and I was like, "What are you laughing at? I'm really working on this. I want to get this, and then once I get it," and they're like, just as the universe, life is constantly, and consciousness is constantly expanding, and there is so much out there that you haven't even scratched the tip of like a needlehead. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's more. And for lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes forever, because so choose lifetimes if that's what you want to experience. But it for some reason, it just clicked like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get it and then be done. This is never done, as you said. You're right.
I mean, I think a good example from my own experience, I'm pretty sure we talked about this last time we spoke, was the sun. I've always felt that the sun had a masculine energy, and I related to it as masculine. And one morning during sun gazing, I just got that the Trinity is the Father, Son, Mother Earth, and us. And that felt really, really true in that moment. Mm-hmm. 6 months later, I'm sun gazing again, and I get it's that the sun is really, really wise old crone. Not maternal, not Mother Earth feeling, but wise old crone. And in that moment, it felt completely true, and it was really confusing for me because I thought, what's changed? Is it me that's changed? Is it the energy from the sun? What's changed? And when you and I talked about that live, I was then inundated, which was lovely, with information and emails and comments from people who were sharing information with me about how the sun was idolized or worshipped or venerated as feminine throughout history in different cultures. And that was it was confirmation for me. So it was again, there's that something about me, something about within my consciousness in relationship to the sun at the very least has changed. I'd like to think it's gone up. My consciousness has risen. And now I'm in the place, well, okay, that's where it is now. And it may change again. I may actually have a completely different relationship with the sun in another 6 months. I may see it as something else again. So I'm not locked into that.
Right. Well, one thing that I also say is like as above, so below. And the way I look at humanity is we have the whole in all the parts. And I look at each human being as male and female energies. And just because the way we are, I don't see why a planet wouldn't be have similar attributes and maybe multidimensional beings just like we are. So I think that you're right on. And one impression that you had was more masculine. Another aspect of it was the crone, and another one might be totally feminine So I think we're multidimensional, multifaceted beings, and I think all the planets and the rest of the universe act similarly as well. So, yeah, cool. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, what is your connotation of ascension? Because this big word comes up over and over and over again. And for the listeners who maybe want a different point of view, or maybe just simply your point of view, what is your point of view of the ascension process?
This is a tricky one because it's another one that keeps evolving. So I would have to say right here, right now, in this 5 minutes, it's this. Heaven to earth, I think, is where I believe it is. I think we're anchoring higher dimensional energies and frequencies through us and into the earth. I know that there are kind of versions or images, visuals that we're given of Ascension where we're rising up, we're moving up through dimensions, either leaving the earth or staying here, depending on who you listen to. But for me, I think we're staying here. I think we're staying on the planet. And I think that we are anchoring these energies, and that our bodies, our hearts, our minds, our society, our culture, everything will evolve as a result. And I think it's going to happen pretty quickly. I don't think we're going to wake up on the 22nd of December and find that everything's different. It's going to be an evolution or an evolutionary process, and relatively quick compared to what we've been through, but not overnight. That's where I'm at the moment.
Okay, cool. Okay, then, so what are your views on consciousness as a whole, collectively or individually? How do you feel that, or how would you describe consciousness?
I think that our individual consciousness contributes to what we call the collective consciousness, and the collective consciousness of humanity contributes to the collective consciousness of all of creation, and that's what we call God.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you feel that there are some people on this planet that are here that have woken up sooner than others and are kind of holding the light, or until everybody else wakes up, or are helping other people wake up?
Yeah, for sure.
And then how about the planet? A lot of people don't talk about Gaia or Mother Earth. And, many times I like to put that out there because I believe she's a sentient being the same as we are. And she doesn't get the credit that she deserves for giving us our homes and the water, the food we drink, and the atmosphere and everything else.
No, I agree. She's absolutely a sentient being, and she's she's on her own spiritual journey. And I don't think that every natural disaster can be put down to the HAARP or some sort of physical manipulation. She's detoxing, the way many of us are right now. She's going through her own ascension symptoms. And as we're doing what I mentioned before, as we're grounding these higher frequencies and these energies into her, she's purging. She's purging the negative. And I think she has held the negative for so long that there's an awful lot to purge.
Right. Yes, I totally agree with you. I really think that the way I look at it, because I'm a physician, I look at us as the cells on the planet, and it can be good cells like white blood cells, or it could be negative cells or bad cells, cancer cells. And the same with the body, our physicalness. Just like when we have appendicitis and we have a surgeon cut out or have an appendectomy to get rid of the diseased part of the body. And as you say, Mother Earth is detoxing and cleansing, and when she finds a negative portion, or not that she finds, she knows where it is, but eventually, once the vibratory frequency goes too low, she has to cleanse herself. And because we are all going through this ascension process, and that's what we're doing, we're purging, we're cleansing, and we need to get rid of cellular memories, whether it be in DNA, whether it be, however you want to look at it. But in order to ascend or go higher in dimension, we need to get rid of the lower vibratory frequencies. That kind of holds us down. Other things that I would think would hold us down would be material things. And a lot of times whenever you're so stuck on, oh my gosh, I can't imagine leaving my truck or leaving my home. And being open to just go with the flow, go where your heart is, and not be tied down by the material things will help. I really think people ascend in an easier fashion than, say, maybe being, I don't want to use the word, how should I say it? Attached is the best way that I can say it. So detach, I guess, would be another way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that's what's happening. We're seeing it was a lot easier up until maybe 5 years ago to be disassociated from what was going on in the world, especially in the West. As long as we were comfortable, we get apathetic when we're comfortable. And the beauty of the flip side, what's turned out to be the positive out of so much negative that's come out of, post 9/11 and post financial global crises and things like that, is that people have more time because they don't have to work 9 to 5 because they haven't got a job anymore, and they're losing their homes, they're losing their possessions, whether they like it or not. So they're having to go through a process of detachment. And now they've got time to actually think and look for solutions and start to wonder about what it's all about. Why was I just working my butt off for 20 years to pay for a house that was taken off me in 5 minutes? And which is why we've seen the Occupy movement, which is why we're seeing the Arab Springs, which is why we're seeing these things, is because suddenly people aren't as comfortable anymore and they're looking for answers. And they're finding the causes of the problem. And so there is I think, what's his name, Bill Brockbader put it really well when he was talking about Project Looking Glass and timelines, when he said every time they try to pull off a negative, what it actually does is reinforce the positive.
Right.
And you can see, 9/11 is the classic example. They pulled off an atrociously negative event that subsequently woke up more people than anything else.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point you bring up. And one thing that I'd like to say, because we're right now in the middle of this part, is with the negative and the positive, I mean, we've decided to be here in this dualistic world, and some of us decided prior to incarnation to be the bad guys, and some of us decided to be the good guys, so to speak. And without the opposition, there's no change and there's no growth. So some of these things that look like they're just heinous crimes, and they are in the eyes of humanity, some things have to come to pass in order to make some evolutionary leaps. And it's easier to understand this if you look at the soul contract. And if you think you've come here for one lifetime to get it right or go to heaven and hell, then this won't make sense to you. But if you know that you live thousands of lifetimes and you come into each lifetime to play a part, per se, in humanity, to help in whether it's the ascension process or even helping Mother Earth or the whole universe, I really think it's important to maybe not hate the negative people that are doing what they're doing. They're doing their part, but to look at them in compassion and know that we've all been the bad guy at one time or another within our lifetimes. And a lot of people don't want to look at it that way, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I've been confronted over the last month or so with information. It's sort of been put in my face for me to look at, which is about the negative and the darkness, as we could call it, and to really look at the idea that the darkness has to come first in order to bring in the light.
Right.
And if we can look at it that way, that it's when we're in with those moments of despair, it's when we're in the darkness that we call on the light. You know, when life is good and light, you know, you're cruising along, you're not asking for help, you're not seeking the light, you're not striving for more, for growth, you're happy, you're just bouncing along. It's when things get dark. And that's when we start looking for answers, and that's when we go within. So the darkness, whether it's within us or whether it's an action that we've done or whether it's what we observe in the world, it has to come before the light. And something else you mentioned about not blaming them, a lot's said about forgiveness, and that to get to a state of forgiveness is kind of the ultimate goal. I don't personally buy that. I don't. Like I say, I don't do forgiveness, but that makes it sound like I hold a grudge, which I don't. I think forgiveness is a stepping stone. What you need to get to, in my opinion, is the place of realizing there is nothing to forgive. And I have my father to thank for that, because I grew up in a very very dysfunctional environment and had a very difficult relationship with him, and he was extremely negative with me, and I grew up very angry, very, very angry at him. And with I remember, you know, all I wanted to do was turn 16 so I could leave. And he died about a month before I turned 16. So then I got even angrier at him for doing that to me and depriving me of my opportunity to go, right, I'm out of here. And I spent a long time, years, dealing with my feelings about him. And I did get to that place of forgiveness, and I realized that there was more. There was more. And, you know, if we're going to believe that we are all an aspect of the Creator, then it has to be all of us. It's not just I'm an aspect of the Creator, you're not because you're an asshole and you did horrible things to me. We either all are or we all aren't. So if that's true, if I accept that I'm an aspect of the Creator or the Creator is within me, then I have to accept it was within him as well. And for him, in order for him to be the person that he was, treat me the way that he did, have the relationship that we did, he had to be so far removed from that part of himself, from that Creator part of himself, in order to do that. That's a hell of a sacrifice, in my opinion.
Right. And
that we must have made that agreement. Okay, this is who I'm going to be for you this time round, because this will give you what you need to do to achieve what you intend to achieve. And from that moment on, all I could feel was gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no need to forgive.
Absolutely. Yeah, and once people get to that particular point, and you had an instant where it was one person, but now globally you can look at humanity as a whole, your entire life, even looking back or looking currently with what's going on. It gives you a whole new perspective of how to look at your own life and how to walk your path.
Mm. Yeah, that served me. That viewpoint has served me time and time again. To go beyond forgiveness and to go to a place of actually getting the lesson, I guess, that a person brought with them into my life.
Wonderful. Okay, so we talked about the ascension process. We talked about consciousness, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but let's get into what everybody's buzzing about right now. This 2012 phenomenon, and we touched on it a little bit. Do you find that the phenomenon? Because you mentioned the Mayan calendar. Is it any different than the ascension process? Is it any different than raising in consciousness, in your opinion? Or is it all combined? Is it all associated? Or is it all connected?
No, it's all connected, I think. I mean, I think the Mayan calendar, as an example, is really it's a countdown clock to something. It's marking time, and it can't just coincidentally coincide with, in my opinion, what we're seeing on the planet in terms of a mass awakening, what we're seeing in terms of celestially, what's going on with our solar system and with our galaxy and photon belts and black holes and the sun's activity, and no matter where you look, something's going on. So it's all got to be connected, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you think that we're all going to go into this new age, as many people say, or does it depend on one's individual soul contract or what timeline that they're aligned with?
Yeah, well, I think that's probably the same, two different ways of saying the same thing. Soul contract or timeline. No, I don't think we're all going to the same place. And I'm observing people getting sick and dying well before their time right now. Sudden strange illnesses. There are people leaving the planet in pretty vast numbers. I mean, I don't know whether it's just in my face a little bit more and I'm noticing it more, or whether there really are people dying in larger numbers than normal. But I've had so many people that I know of, directly or indirectly, that have died suddenly and inexplicably. Someone catching some 1 in a million disease that just shouldn't have happened. And for the most part, they are people who we would, I guess, call asleep or fearful, really fearful people.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I don't think we're all going to end up in the same place. And I think that as the Earth, as we talked about before, is detoxing, we probably are going to see some more large numbers of people being taken out in one blow, like we happened in Sri Lanka and things like that. But I think like you said, it comes down to our soul contract or whatever timeline we're on.
Right. And so do you have any recommendations, like how can each individual person help this planet, themselves, or even others around them? What would your suggestion be?
Spend as much time as you can getting in tune with yourself and getting the answers from within. I mean, great, do your research, watch videos, read books, do all of that, because they act as triggers for you to remember your own truth. But take time out from that and spend some time just in whatever way whatever that is, whether it's, whether you do your gardening or meditate or go for walks, whatever that is for you, but a place where you can just get in touch with what's going on in your own heart and in your own gut. And ask questions. Just ask questions. I mean, whenever I really ask a heartfelt question of the universe, I get an answer. It shows up one way or the other. And the quality of our questions are important. So I guess the more you go within, the better the questions you ask.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you think meditation is helpful?
Yeah, I do. And I think we get too hung up on it, like how to do it, and people think they can't meditate. Well, whether we know it or not, we meditate all the time. Every time we just get lost in an activity that we love. So that's why I say, even if it's gardening, you don't have to. I mean, I know people who can spend hours in the garden thinking and just lost in their own thoughts. That's a form of meditation. But just do it a little bit more consciously by asking questions and feeling into your body.
Great. You know what? I think we might have a caller that's on right now. If you just hold on here 1 second, let me make sure that if they actually have a question. Hello, caller. Do you have a question?
Yes, it's Jay calling from Canada. How's it going?
Great.
Hi, Jay.
Hey, Lisa. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I was a question regarding your saying about forgiveness, and I've done forgiveness work with my dad face to face while he was still alive, and I'm going to be doing it with my mother very shortly. But my question is that I find that when you open up this can of worms right now, which is our spiritual growth right now, it seems like the past and the present are all happening at the same time. And I just find, if you look at even past life stuff, we got to think who's in our life from our past life. I mean, it can get really complicated if you think about it. But, I mean, we open up a can of worms when we actually, awaken and we take the spiritual path. I just wondered, is the reason why that people are dropping out of this earth right now is that they haven't dealt with it for such a long time, and now the time they have to deal with all the stuff in past life and in our present life too. Is that one of the reasons why too?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's crunch time. This is karma time. And that's why we're finding our lives can be so hectic. Because I think it's time to clear all our karma, and not just from this lifetime, but from all of them. And yeah, it can be overwhelming, and your life can completely go out of control for a while.
Yeah, if you want my take on that, I really think that, of course, we're all energy beings. Everything around us is energy, and everything has a frequency to it. And I think that the people that are holding a lower vibratory frequency, and we mentioned this during the show already, I really think that fear lowers your vibratory frequency. And if you don't do the work, so to speak, and face your fears and all the cellular memories, whether it's in the DNA, as we discussed, I really think that those are the people that are leaving the planet right now because they just can't hang with these higher vibratory frequencies. And, it's difficult to look at, but if in some cases, but if you look at it in the eyes of energy, and it is a choice. We're here on a planet that is free will. And we can look at ourselves if we want, and there's no judgment, because if we don't get it this time, we're going to get it the next lifetime or the next 1,000 lifetimes, however it works out. So what I see personally is the people that are passing away right now, again, it's part of the soul contract, but we're also here with free will that we can choose whether we face some of these issues that we've had, whether it be this lifetime or last. And I think that if you don't work on it, and that's my suggestion to people listening, by the end of this year, things are speeding up, and the vibration is going to get higher and higher and higher. And you can either ride the waves up and down, or you can skirt across the top of them. And how you do that is raising your vibratory frequency as high as you possibly can. And that's just my personal opinion, so hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think surrender. Surrender's a really powerful thing.
All right, thank you, caller.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Did we answer your question? Or is he gone?
Hold on, let me see if I can get him back on here. Sorry, was it Jay?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay, did we
answer your question, Jay?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm just looking forward to what you have in store for your opinions or wisdom you have to share with the other people, or other people listening to the show, too. It's quite an interesting time. I'm always interested in learning from people what 2012 has in store. So, yeah, it is Ascension time for sure.
Yeah, you can see it all around you, can't you? Oh,
yeah, I know. I just weird stuff happening. With special weather right now, it's just crazy. And I don't know where. It sounds like are you down in Australia somewhere, Lisa? Is it Lisa? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just wondered how the solar flare is affecting you guys down there, because I find that every time I look, there's a big solar flare. It's affecting either the top northern atmosphere or the bottom, and you are at the bottom. So I just wonder how it's affecting you down under and all the people down under.
Well, funnily enough, I've got no phone and internet at my place, so I'm at a friend's house at the moment using theirs.
Okay.
I notice it on a physical level a little bit, but I think it does tend to be the northern hemisphere that cops the most of it, I think. And I observe it in my kids. I mean, kids are so sensitive, and they can become really ratty. I mean, sometimes even feral when we're in the middle of a big CME, sort of storm. But I find a little bit emotional, and that's about as much of an effect as I notice.
Lisa, have you found, or Jay, have you paid attention at all to the animals and the birds and things like that in nature? I mean, the other day, my girlfriend and I were taking a walk in the middle of the day, and here in New Mexico, at least where I'm at, these black vultures they're kind of rare around here. Like, you may see one just, at a whim or whatever, or you might get a glimpse of one, I guess I should say. And when we were walking, I think it was yesterday or the day before, we saw 25 of them, I counted, but there was probably more, that were circling around the town that I'm in as we're walking. And it was the weirdest thing to me because, first of all, they're rare in this region, and there they are above the city, the small city or town that we're in, and just circling and just diving, and this was around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Then another thing walking was there was these 2 dogs that we pass every day that we walk by, and they bark a little bit and then they go back to their thing. They were barking at the ground. Both of them were so fixed on the ground and digging, like there was a vibration or there was something going on that was just distracting them. It was quite, and that was the same. It was like 2 minutes after we saw those birds that were flying around, the black vultures.
Dogs are strange creatures.
Well, this is true, but when you just see some strange things, and you're thinking, I wonder if this is part of this movement or this change or this ascension, and because when you see things that are out of the norm, you gotta raise an eyebrow and think, I wonder if this is all part of it too.
Well, I don't know if this is out of the norm or not, but I mean, I've been living in the house that I'm in now since last July, and for the first, up until Christmas really, didn't see much in the way of kookaburras, which are a native bird to here. And since Christmas, the house is surrounded by kookaburras. I don't know if you know what they are, but they're the ones that laugh. Mm-hmm. Laughing birds. And they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful birds, but they're normally very shy. And they're not only sitting on the grass next to us quite comfortably, they sit and look in the window and watch us. And this is new. This has only been the last few months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I also wanted to mention, we talked about the Earth and we're talking about, humanity, but Another thing, if you picture the wildlife, and I mean the plants, the animals, everything like that we're all ascending and we're all raising in consciousness. And I really think that is a good indicator when you're seeing it all around you, that the animals that are coming closer to you, like you're saying, I really think that that's a part of this. And it's almost like their awareness is risen just like ours is rising. And it's almost like a communication type of a thing that maybe, I'm not sure, but it seems to me that as they raise in consciousness, we may be able to communicate in such a way that we never could before, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's on the cards for sure.
All right.
Telepathic communication with animals.
Right. Thank you so much, Jay, for calling in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks so much.
All right, Lisa, let's see. We have 5 minutes left on this show, but I put in some extra time. Is there anything else you would like to cover while we're on?
Do you have any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said no. I think we've covered everything that I thought we might.
Okay. How can people get a hold of you if they want to, talk to you or interview you, or if they have any questions? Maybe you could give out your YouTube page or your website or.
It's all Lisa M. Harrison. So my website is lisamharrison.com. My YouTube channel is Lisa M. Harrison. And you can send me an email at lisamharrison.com.
Wonderful.
Or look me up on Facebook as well.
Okay, great. I want to thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, once again, congratulations, and thank you for having me as your first guest.
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground here, and hopefully the listeners now and in the future, because it'll be archived, will get a lot out of it. And is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Know that you're where you need to be. Listen to that. Follow your intuition. Follow your gut. Don't go into fear. That's it, really. Stay away from the fear. Don't listen to it, You are creating your reality as you go along. That's what I believe completely. So, do you want a future filled with fear, or do you want a future filled with love and, prosperity and oneness and all the things we strive for? So, yeah, that's it. Stay away from the fear.
That's great advice. Okay, thanks again for being on the show, and we'd love to get you back for future updates if you like.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right, so hang on the line here for just a sec until I wrap things up here. Next week, Sunday, April 15th at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we will have my very good friend Terry Appoletti on the show. She is a psychic and a deep channeler. We will be discussing what 2012 means to humanity, the Earth, and the entire universe. I'll be asking the difficult questions like, is humanity destined to evolve into a new species? Will the Earth turn into a star at the end of this year, as some people have claimed? So tune in as we discuss the possibilities. Until next time, I'm Dr. Joseph Marra, signing off for A Guiding Light.